Okay, I know. Donald Trump was just indicted by the special counsel for everything that happened on January 6th and all the events that led up to it. And this has been huge. A lot of people are talking about it, but that's not the only time that he broke the law while he was in the office, and that actually wasn't the last time that he broke the law while he was president. And I'm looking at probably what the next indictment's gonna be. He's been indicted 3 times in the last 4 months, and the next one's probably gonna happen any day now. And it's like a lot of people know, it's probably gonna happen down in Georgia. Now, I want to go over this. This is actually, there's a lot more to it than a lot of people know. This is really crazy. This is really interesting. It's probably going to be a Rico case. My name is Matthew. Welcome to Matthew Land. All right, first, let's go over a few things real quick. The district attorney down in Fulton County, Georgia, where this is going to be brought, her name is Fani Willis. Now, Willis made a name for herself when she was first elected district attorney as somewhat of a RICO specialist. One of the first things that she did was she actually brought a RICO case against a bunch of teachers who were caught altering standardized tests for a bunch of students, which actually affected bonuses that they were going to get. Now, the basics of RICO. RICO stands for Racketeering, Influence, and Corrupt Organization. And racketeering is a type of organized crime in which the people are set up a coercive, fraudulent, extortionary, or otherwise illegal coordinated scheme or operation to repeatedly or consistently collect a profit. Now, I'll go into a little bit more detail to give you the players, but a quick overview is that Donald Trump tried to force the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, to fraudulently say that the vote tally was different from what it was. And he threatened to use the power of the presidency to actually go after him and criminally charge him. And this was most famously done in that infamous phone call. Now, that happened on January 2nd. Now, Fani Willis assembled what's called a special purpose grand jury. Now, they were just a fact-finding body. That's all that they did, was they were just investigators, basically. They brought in a bunch of people to talk to, put them under oath, and they discovered a lot of stuff. Their biggest thing that we know that they found, we don't have all the details of everything that they found yet. We'll find out a lot more soon. Definitely if or when Trump is charged. But one thing that we do know, one piece of evidence that did come out, is that 100% the vote in Georgia was correct. There's no fraud in Georgia. It's accurate. Biden won in Georgia. Period. He won by 11,779 votes. And so when Trump said in that phone call that he needed 11,780 votes, Donald Trump was 100% correct. He did need 11,780 votes, which is one more than he had. And that's another thing that Trump said, which is one more than I need. Well, anyway, Trump called Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, asking him to find those 11,780 votes. He threatened to use the power of the presidency to prosecute him. And Trump told him that what he was doing was criminal, and said that he'd take action if he didn't bend to his will. Now, here's some of the key quotes of that phone call. "All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have," Trump said on the call, because we won the state. Now, Trump also said, there's nothing wrong with saying that, you've recalculated. Even if you cut them in half again, cut them in half again. It's more votes than we need. Now, if the charges in the federal indictment mimic what are in the Georgia indictment, they may say during the call, Trump lied to the Georgia Secretary of State to induce him to alter Georgia's popular vote count and call into question the validity of Biden's electors. Now, this scheme didn't even start on January 2nd. It started before then. It started just before the November election. And it started with Michael Flynn. Remember him? Michael Flynn and a conservative attorney named Lynn Wood. They met in South Carolina where Lynn Wood lived. And they discussed ways to influence the election. We know this because Lynn Wood gave a television interview saying this. Exactly. This is public knowledge. This isn't something that the special grand jury had to go and investigate and find. There's a television interview proving this. So this is public knowledge. They also discussed ways of, because they knew how close it was going to be at that time, they discussed ways of, if it's going to be really close, maybe there are ways that we can sort of try and pressure the Secretary of State to threaten him with legal action. And say that maybe he's breaking the law somehow. They're trying to extort him a little bit. Obviously, this isn't 100% legit. Now, as soon as Trump lost the vote in 2020, this is where Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, South Carolina, South Carolina. That just sticks in my head for some reason because we're talking about Georgia. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham actually made a bunch of phone calls. He even visited Georgia and talked to Secretary of State Raffensperger, trying to pressure him to actually cast out ballots, mail-in ballots. Now, I want to remind you that this is during COVID, where this whole time, Democrats believing in COVID. They believed in getting vaccines. They believed in social distancing. They believed in not going out any more than they had to. And typically Republicans believed in screw all that. Let's go out, herd immunity. It doesn't matter if we get sick, whatever. No vaccines. If they didn't trust mail-in ballots, they wanted to go and vote in person. Now, Lindsey Graham went and was trying to convince Raffensperger to find ways to get rid of mail-in ballots. Find ways to reject as many mail-in ballots as he possibly could. Find ways to shred them, do whatever he could to legally cast mail-in ballots. And this is what Raffensperger said, is that he was being pressured by Lindsey Graham to do this. Now, it isn't clear completely whether or not what Lindsey Graham was doing here was illegal per se or just unethical. Now, I will say that there are a number of people who have submitted ethics complaints to the Senate Ethics Committee to look into this, but it's not 100% whether or not this is illegal. But let's go back to the definition of Rico. The I stands for influence, and the C stands for corrupt, and the O stands for organization. Now, Lindsey Graham was trying to corruptly influence Secretary of State Raffensperger. He was part of an organized influence, corruption. So that's why, even though it wasn't 100% illegal, I can see an avenue for him to be wrapped up into a Rico case. Because he was involved. He was part of it. What he wasn't doing wasn't necessarily 100% illegal, but he was involved in the whole scheme, the overall scheme. So maybe he was a player. At the very least, he was a player. And he's doing this in a state that obviously, I know I said this a bunch of times, but South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham was doing this in a state that he didn't represent. So I don't know. He said that he was doing this because he's trying to make sure that the presidential election, which is a national election, and he's a United States senator, he's got a vested interest in making sure that this is what he was claiming. But this is just what he says. In all fairness, I want to give fairness to what he's saying, but I can see a case made for how he may be swept up in this. Now, this is all things that started happening in November. Now let's go to December. On December 3rd, our buddy Rudy Giuliani actually testified in front of a Georgia State Senate subcommittee hearing that he had video evidence that there were goings on. He had evidence of massive voter fraud in multiple states, including Georgia, where there was voter fraud. He had evidence that there were Democrats kicking the Republicans out of watching the vote counts. Now, partisan watchers of people counting the votes is 100% legit. It's a thing, totally legal, totally normal. But because they're allowed to be there, they're not allowed to be kicked out. And so that was part of the thing that Giuliani was saying, that he had evidence that was saying that they were getting kicked out and the votes were being counted after hours without them there. So that would be 100% shady. Fair. The reason that they were getting kicked out is they were locking up for the night. That's what it was. They weren't getting kicked out so that they could keep counting votes. They're getting kicked out because they were kicking everyone out. Now, he also said that, you may have heard about this, that there were two black women who were handing back and forth a USB drive. And he said they were passing it back and forth like a vial of cocaine or heroin. This is Ruby Freeman and her daughter Shay Moss. Now, if you watch the televised January 6th House Judiciary Committee, Shay Moss testified. She was very tearful. It was pretty emotional about how her life was just destroyed about all this. It was a ginger mint that she was passing to her mother. Just a mint, just a piece of candy. Now, on July 26th, Giuliani actually came out and admitted that he knew all along that this was a bunch of bullshit. He actually said this while he was under oath in a subcommittee hearing. So he perjured himself, which obviously, you know it, I know it, the Lord knows it, this is illegal. And also these videos that he provided, that he gave these to the Georgia State Senate subcommittee. They gave them to both the Georgia Bureau of Investigations and to the Federal Bureau of Investigations, just to make sure that both on the state level and the federal level, double checking each other. They both really quickly came back and debunked everything. So they immediately knew that this evidence that he gave wasn't legit. On top of that, Giuliani coordinated a scheme with fake electors in December. This all happened, their elector meeting was on December 14th. Now, before that elector meeting happened, the official elector meeting happened that elected Biden. They'd have the fake elector meeting. The elector meeting was, they need to have the meeting on a certain day. It's written into Georgia law. So they'd have the fake elector meeting on that day. So he had to have all this worked out. So he organized the whole thing, coordinated the whole thing, including giving them official looking ballots and an official looking certification form that was then supposed to be mailed into the National Archives and then given to Vice President Pence so that he can count that off when he was certifying the vote on January 6th. Now, these fake electors, there are 16 fake electors. 8 of them have actually taken immunity deals. So, there are 8 of them. Obviously, in order to take an immunity deal, you've got to roll on someone. So they've thrown a bunch of people under the bus. And you're not just going to, 8 people aren't just going to throw 8 other people under the bus and that's how you're going to get immunity. No, it's got to be more than just that. So you know that Rudy's under the bus and it's got to be, it's going deeper than that. It's going a lot deeper than that. So what I'm telling you, it's going deeper than that. I'm positive of that. And then, all right. So now Michael Flynn, he enters the story again. On December 18th, he went to the White House to meet with Trump and Trump's attorney, Sidney Powell. A lot of people have referred to her as the Kraken, which I don't know why, but the name just cracks me up. They discussed, quote, taking military capabilities and placing them in swing states to, quote, basically rerun elections in each of those states. They wanted to enforce martial law and rerun elections. They wanted to take voting machines and declare martial law and rerun elections. Now, there were also multiple phone calls between Trump and Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, during this whole time. There were a total of 18 phone calls between Trump and Raffensperger. 18 calls. Well, like he's a teenage girl. Between then and January 2nd. And then the electoral votes were counted in the House of Representatives on January 6th when the whole insurrection occurred. But our story doesn't end there. The whole Georgia saga doesn't end on January 6th. It keeps going. Can you believe that? We're not done. Everything that happened in the Capitol, we're still going. We're still trying. That's the thing that just blows my mind and pisses me off. We're still going after all that. Well, anyway, so January 7th, one day after that, Trump's attorney, Sidney Powell, and Coffee County, Georgia, GOP chairwoman named Kathy Latham operates a group of operatives working with Powell into the Coffee County election headquarters. This group allegedly copied a whole bunch of voter information and voting data off of the vote machines. And they used all this information, including private voter data, and misrepresented it as proof of voter fraud. Now, again, the special grand jury, one of the things that we know that they found was there was no voter fraud in Georgia. That was one of the things that they came out really quickly and said, no voter fraud in Georgia. Now, another little tidbit, Michael Flynn is sort of part of the story here. He's on the board of directors here. Now, with all that being said, this is as far as I've gotten with all the research that I've done. This is where I kind of come to an end. So we possibly have, if there's a Rico case, we've got Donald Trump, Michael Flynn, the conservative attorney Lynn Wood, Senator Lindsey Graham, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Kathy Latham, and a total of 16 fake electors. 8 of them have taken immunity deals. That is 23 total individuals. Now, Fani Willis, for a woman who likes Rico cases, getting 23 convictions with one swing, that sounds like a hell of a case. And she's had a long time to be preparing for this. And next week, she's said that she's preparing to have the streets around the courthouse closed. So this is going to be a hell of a month for Trump. We'll see what happens. Well, as always, my name is Matthew. This has been Matthew Land. It's going to be exciting to see what happens next. I'll keep you updated. If you think anything I've said is interesting or thought-provoking or anything, make sure you like and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.
President Trump is still liable for everything he did while he was in office as an ordinary citizen. Unless the statute of limitations is run, still liable for everything he did while he's in office. Didn't get away with anything yet. Yet. We have a criminal justice system in this country. We have civil litigation. And former presidents are not immune from being accountable by either one.